Dozens of passengers from a Melbourne-bound flight remain in New Zealand this morning after an engine caught fire shortly after takeoff. One witness has described hearing what sounded like a car backfiring not long after takeoff from Queenstown before seeing flames shooting from the back of the plane.
The Virgin Australia flight made an emergency landing at Invercargill. Steph Ferrier joins us now from Melbourne Airport. Steph, good morning. So what caused this?
Good morning, Michael. Yes, Virgin Australia says that it's likely that a bird strike caused this engine to catch fire on the Boeing 737-800 that, as you say, was heading from Queenstown back to Melbourne with 67 people on board just after takeoff. And we saw horrified people on the ground taking pictures of what they could see, which was those flames that were shooting out of the back of that engine after hearing loud bangs from the air as well. We also spoke to one of the passengers on board, Michael Hayward. Now, he had the prime view because he was sitting right behind the wing where this engine caught fire, and no doubt it was a pretty terrifying experience for him. This is what he had to say.
At 6 p.m, the sun has set. We're in Queenstown, so valleys around us, nice and dark, what we'd expect. Plane starts taking off, wheels leave the runway, next thing you know, bang. Flashes from outside the right-hand engine. We've flown into what we believe are birds, and so all we hear are boom, 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 bright orange lights filling up the cabin. And the next 30, 40 seconds, just flames spitting out of the engine, which is not quite what you want to see on an aeroplane.
Certainly not what you want to have happen when you're a passenger on a plane, indeed. But he does say that there were some cries, there were some people panicking when this was happening. However, within a few minutes, people started to calm down. He says that the pilots were absolutely superb, shutting off that engine within about 40 seconds. And he said that while it's not the best to be flying on one engine, it's definitely better than flying on none. And all of them got off at Invercargill with no problem whatsoever. So after they had to be diverted there, now they're going to be getting on a bus about 2.5 hours from Invercargill back to Queenstown Airport to be able to resume their journey on a new plane with a new crew. But what we've heard from the Civil Aviation Authority over there is that these sorts of bird strikes and flying into a flock of birds, that normally happens only about 4 in every 10,000 aircraft movements. So it is pretty rare, but it does, of course, depend on exactly where those bird strikes happen. Sounds as if it was an entire flock of birds, and that is why one of these engines had to shut down. But a really great ending for all those people who were on board and got back safely on terra firma.
Steph, thank you.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang has arrived in Perth as he wraps up his 3-day visit to Australia, aimed at strengthening China's diplomatic ties. Reporter Darina Zaverna joins us now from Perth. Darina, good morning. The Chinese Premier is spending his last day in Australia in Perth, so what's on the agenda today?
Good morning, Emma. It's slated to be another very busy day for Premier Li Qiang. Critical minerals, business, tourism, and perhaps rock lobsters dominating his visit to WA. It's the first time in nearly 2 decades that we've had a Chinese premier visit the state. This morning, he's set to have a one-on-one meeting with WA's Premier Roger Cook, an opportunity for Mr Cook to make a case for the state's crayfishers, as we're, of course, yet to hear about the much anticipated and hoped for lift of rock lobster trade restrictions. We did yesterday, however, hear about China offering 15-day visa-free travel for Australians. So Mr Cook is reportedly keen to discuss more direct flights between Perth and China as well. Now, later this morning, Premier Li will tour a partly Chinese-owned Tianqi lithium hydroxide processing plant. It's the first of its kind in Australia, and he'll also be joined by the Resources Minister, Madeleine King, and Mr Cook. And he'll also visit Fortescue's Hazelmere Research and Development Facility. Now, perhaps one key event of today will be the Australia-China CEO Roundtable. It will be the first one held in 7 years, and there'll be about a dozen delegates, business delegates from each country. Australian mining sector, of course, dominating the Australian representatives. And before his send-off, the Chung Wu Association will host a big banquet for Premier Li, which will also be joined by the PM, Anthony Albanese. So no sign of slowing down for Premier Li on his last leg of the Australian trip.
Another busy day. Dorina, thank you.
To other news now, Israeli anti-government protesters are rallying in Jerusalem. Protesters are calling for new elections in an effort to replace the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They are expected to head to the private residence of the Prime Minister.
The former Bishop of Broome, Christopher Saunders, has appeared in the Broome Magistrates Court on 2 new charges of unlawful and indecent assault alleged to have occurred in 2016. The police prosecutor told the court there were more than 200 people on the police witness list. It brings Mr Saunders' total charges to 28. His defence lawyer has previously indicated his client will plead not guilty to all charges.
A Russian court says the trial of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich on espionage charges will start behind closed doors next week. Russian officials have accused Gershkovich of spying for the CIA. He is facing up to 20 years in jail if found guilty. A Kremlin spokesperson confirmed Russia is in contact, though, with the US about a possible prisoner exchange.
An inquiry into the Taipan helicopter crash investigation has heard there was a lack of trust between the ADF and Queensland Police. 4 Army airmen were killed when their helicopter crashed into the ocean during a training exercise last year. A senior constable has told the inquiry the ADF was dismissive of police expertise and that he believes the ADF wasn't sharing crucial evidence. The inquiry continues.
A new survey suggests school leavers are increasingly deciding what university to go to based on the degree price and job opportunities. The University Admission Centre surveyed almost 17,000 students, finding young people are thinking about the cost of living more than ever before.
Thailand's Senate is expected to pass legislation to legalise same-sex marriage today. It will then be sent to the King of Thailand for approval. Thailand will be the first Southeast Asian country and 3rd jurisdiction in Asia to legalise same-sex marriage.
OK, let's see what the markets have been up to. Our futures are pointing up after a slight rise on Wall Street. The Aussie dollar just over 66 US cents. Brent crude up, and gold this morning is worth 2,319 US dollars an ounce.
A 13-tonne, $14 million sculpture will arrive in Canberra today, ahead of its installation at the National Gallery of Australia. Ouroboros is the work of Australian artist Lindy Lee, based on the ancient image of a snake eating its own tail. It was built in Brisbane and has been travelling to Canberra for the past week by road, at times needing a police escort. That
Very
is
slowly.
huge, absolutely huge.